remember, America has slapped Indian tech with a $100,000 reality check. That's the new price tag for an H1-B visa application. And while the move is sparking panic among professionals as well as some students who would be graduating this year or the next, there's another side to the story, one that could turn this into an opportunity for India's GCCs, or the Global Capability Centers. Now, let's look at what's happening. American banks, including Citibank, JP Morgan, as well as Goldman Sachs, have signaled that they'll lean more on their India hubs to sidestep the soaring visa costs. Now, some analysts are calling India's GCCs the workaround engine for corporate America. Meanwhile, remember, Delhi had hit back saying Washington's policy reflects a fear of Indian talent. The US later clarified that the application fee hike applies only to new visas and not to renewals of visas of professionals already working in the US. Now, there's a trade-off. On the one hand, India's GCCs could see an accelerated shift of high-value work, which could include functions like R&D, AI, cybersecurity, as well as product design and engineering, all moving to cities like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Pune, as well as Noida, which are booming hubs of GCCs. But on the other hand, there's a flip side as well, where IT majors are warning that as much as $150 to $550 million of extra immigration costs as well as short-term margin pressures could hit them. Now, some client-facing roles simply cannot be offshored, is the warning coming from IT companies. Experts that News9 has spoken to suggest that the mid-cap IT stocks who are just about acquiring more clients in the US would be hit harder than the large-cap blue-chip companies, ones that already seem well-staffed overseas, especially in the US market. So, is this protectionism gone too far, or an inflection point for India's tech powerhouses? The answer may lie in how quickly our GCCs climb up the value chain from back-end delivery to frontline innovation. Now, one thing seems fairly clear. America's visa shock may just hand India's GCCs their moment. But the question is, can India clinch it? Let's discuss this with Rakesh Khar, editor News9, who joins me this morning. Good morning, Rakesh. Pleasure having you here with us on News9. Now, is this an opportunity in the making, the H1-B soaring new applicant visa fee versus the possibility of GCCs scaling up and getting clients in the US to offshore more work back home here in India?
Good morning, Kartik. It indeed is an opportunity, but GCC, as you know, has been a story in the making, and it's a great success story that India has adapted in the last decade or more. And the potential outlook for the sector is extremely bright. We're looking at about $110 billion by 2030, which is currently at about $65 billion, with about 1,800 or 1,900 GCCs mounting to about 2,500. But to fast track this outlook, would take a lot more than a positive intent. We need to be working closely with top American companies to get them to see value in the Indian GCC. Because as we have noticed, and as you pointed out in your report, that the banks already have signaled. My worry is that the Trump administration, given its current state of mind vis-a-vis India, could also look at creating some kind of challenges for offshoring such kind of activities. We hope that doesn't happen. In the meanwhile, GCC is indeed it's a fillip for the sector. And the other interesting piece here is that, Kartik, the GCCs already have a point of view in regard to the employment of talent, which is in the middle and the upper level of the echelons of the tech companies. While as the bulk of India's tech story rests on the bottom of the pyramid, as we call it, or the value versus volume game. So the top talent would still be, so to say, retained by American companies, paying that hefty fee that Trump has imposed. So what happens to the main bulk force of Indian IT story, which runs the huge challenge of getting into a very, very gray zone? As it is, we've been arguing between both of us, and we raised this issue with the IT minister also at our WITT summit. Looking back, we've not been able to, so to say, reimagine our IT story. We have a grand success, say, 20, 30 years ago. It needed to be reimagined from both value and volume perspective. It needed to be reimagined from the business landscape, because we never know what kind of challenges would come. Nobody would have thought that this hefty penalty would come in, but it has come in now. And then this is a new paradigm which is creating massive trouble for the Indian IT sector. One little window of opportunity there is, because again, it's a geopolitical, geoeconomic story, is from October 1, 2025. China seizing the opportunity, has, so to say, hugely liberalized its visa policy, to the extent that you don't even need a Chinese employer to call you in there. They're
Right.
almost a free entry. So this K visa versus H1 is an interesting play for the larger middle of the, Indian IT story, where we can look at immediately shifting gears and moving there.
Right.
Back to the GCC story, I think, Government of India has, so to say, committed itself to investing heavily from the policy framework. We need to take it deeper to tier 2, tier 3 cities where the cost advantages will come in, and also see that we are able to bring in top talent. And not just that, we also need to create opportunities for the lower end of the talent in GCC. Then possibly we'll be able to mitigate the challenge as it has come.
All right, Rakesh, a lot of points that you've made, all valid ones. I want to pick up one or two of them, given the paucity of time, and go a little deeper into them. The first point that you mentioned about the fact that Donald Trump could throw spanner in the works of more US work being offshore to India. Now, what GCCs could potentially do is pretty much the reverse of what Donald Trump wants to happen. Because at one point, Donald Trump wants more investments, overseas investments coming into US. But if you're looking at GCCs flourishing in India, it calls for reverse investment. US companies investing here in India. How big a problem do you think that could be for Donald Trump and his policy?
It merited a case for a policy framework. Trump and his administration is working in an environment where there's less occasion for merit and logic. There is more occasion for, emotion, and, it's all tied up to the MAGA sentiment, whatever that means. So in that sense, I wouldn't be completely surprised. That's why I mentioned an offshoring penalty, because he doesn't want American capital to move left, right, center. He doesn't want American talent, which doesn't really happen in the big way. I mean, the fact of the matter is that all of us looked at America as the big destination to go, because it was the most secular platform to invite talent from all over the world. And happily for India, sadly for India in a way, looking at it in terms of brain drain, but happily that we hosted the talent in America, hosted India's top tech talent. There are concerns that America sees, which are more in the emotional zone. So I am not totally convinced that he would see merit in what he is doing.
All right. I want to touch upon another point that you raised, and another very valid point, Rakesh, and this comes from the fact that GCCs are looking at middle level and top level talent pool. However, those who graduate from engineering colleges typically start off as coders, move to the US. So while for tech companies who operate overseas, it's a great cost arbitrage. Also, for Indians who migrate to an economy like the US, it's better quality of living, it is better salary, and more income, more remittances coming back to India. All of that now has a big question mark, because even if GCCs are able to afford that talent at the bottom of the pyramid, like you called it, Indian GCCs will not be paying them those salaries. And will our cities be able to accommodate the new talent which is going to occupy those seats and also occupy real estate in these cities?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, if you, imagine a GCC, it is not the seat for, entry-level talent. So, it defeats the purpose of a GCC. GCC is essentially R&D, innovation, high-level capabilities. That's why it's a global capability center. And it's more a corporate aligned function than a client-facing function. So I don't know whether we have a solution there. That's why I mentioned China, which is a potential solution where, we could park our entry-level plus talent into a zone where, they don't feel frustrated. And we also signal a new relationship, between China and India in the economic framework, which has been talked about at the policy level, both by the Prime Minister and, so to say, the Commerce Minister and the External Affairs Minister.
And let's stick on for just another minute on this Chinese K visa, which you're saying could be an opportunity for India's coders, the fresh pool of talent that enters the workforce every year. Now, wouldn't the problems in China be pretty much similar to the problems of absorbing them here back home in India? Because at the, if Indian IT companies are looking at servicing US clients, US's problems with India seem to be similar to US's problems with China. So at the end of the day, the entire offshoring model, whether these new employees work out of an India office or a China office servicing a US client, those would pretty much stay intact, wouldn't they?
I don't know. You'll have to really weigh, US's approach to China versus India. Unfortunately, as of date, India seems to be at the, most receiving end versus China. Of course, yesterday also Trump mentioned China and US, but China and India in the same breath when it comes to Russian oil. But he also brought in EU. So my view is that we should not block our view from the K visa opportunity, and we should see it as an opportunity. And it could, apart from the US companies, there could be other opportunities also, and maybe Vietnam, Philippines, which anyway are a competition to India in terms of this talent in the tech sector. So we'll have to reimagine ourselves. As I mentioned, at the macro level, it's our failure collectively to reimagine our tech story, given its very, very strong initial success. Any template which is successful needs to be reimagined every 5 years, leave alone a decade. My view is that, I may be a little bit of a pessimist in this case. We haven't been able to seize the opportunity and reimagine every 5 years. We haven't done that in a decade or two as well.
Right. In fact, the IT story has well long lived its and beyond lived its few decades that Rakesh is talking about. But Rakesh Khar, thank you so much for joining us here with this
Thank you,
input on
Kartik.
News9.